Hey everyone, it's Julie here. I'm hurting Joel. He's turning his computer on, so just give us a few minutes.
Hello, everyone. What's up, STS Nation? Welcome to a live breaking news episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in all of true crime. And if you haven't figured it out yet, we are awaiting James Crumbley verdict. They've announced that they have in fact reached a verdict. You see verdict watch on the top right-hand corner. And soon we will have some understanding of whether this person has been found either guilty, not guilty, or if there's some sort of hung jury. It seems, look at this. Joel, did you wake up from a nap? I just finished a podcast. I raced home and was ordered. Look at this. Look at the look at this. Look at the flack I'm taking. We prefer your wife. Look at this. She's been on it all day long, or all last 7 days that we've been doing this. Thrown into the fire here. I was actually working on setting up another show for next week, which I am in the process of doing, a very interesting show about a unsolved murder out of Arizona. So hoping to bring that to you next week. But of course, James Crumbley is one of the two parents who, for the first time in American jurisprudence, in the justice system, are being tried for being responsible for their child, who is a convicted killer in a school shooting. James Crumbley spoke very briefly during this trial, and it was on Wednesday, to simply say that he would not testify. Look at this. Joel, it wouldn't say verdict reach. If it were a hung jury, the jury would send a message. Oh, there you go. A verdict was reached. There you go. So forgive me. I'm jumping in here very last second. An obvious point. And here we go. We see some bailiffs entering the courtroom. There is James Crumbley, and he appears to be cuffed there. He is shackled from the waist. We will watch and we will listen here together as this verdict is read aloud. And he is putting a tie on.
Next court is now in session. The Honorable Shirley Matthews presiding.
Good evening. You may be seated.
Your Honor, calling People v. James Crumbley, case number 22279-989-FH.
Thank you, Marquise. Will be up, people.
Karen McDonald on behalf. Good evening, Your Honor. Marielle Lehman on behalf of James Crumbley.
Mr. Crumbley, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right, you can be seated. I want to indicate, first of all, there was a question the media was dying to know about. I'm going to read that into the record. I consulted with the attorneys who answered the question, and so then I sent the question back in. They agreed on the answer. The jury asked, please define Article 16.13, bullet number 4, define willfully neglected and grossly negligent. The lawyers agreed to answer the question. Please see jury instruction 16.18 for the definition of gross negligence. All other definitions are contained within jury instruction 16.13. I also want to point out that there's a request by the media to ask the jury members if they would be willing to remain in the courthouse and be questioned off camera. Because there would be a verdict and no other defendant pending trial, I would have been willing to do that. But the courthouse closes at 4:30, and I have continually imposed on the courthouse for the sake of this trial and the other one. I cannot impose on the staff or the deputies any further. I also want to indicate that with regard to case number 22279-990 FH, the People versus Jennifer Crumbley, There is an order restricting pretrial publicity. It was entered on July 14th, 2022. That order will be set aside as soon as the verdict is read. I will also be issuing an order that will obviously not be made public in the courthouse until tomorrow morning. In addition, case number 22-279989 FH of the People versus James Crumbley, the same thing. The order restricting pretrial publicity was entered on July 14th, 2022, and that order will also be set aside as of the reading of the verdict. Are you ready for the jury?
Yes, Ron.
Yes, Ron.
Here comes a reading of the verdict.
All rise for the jury.
Good evening. You may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you've worked very hard, and we've all been awaiting your decision. I know this is a very intense decision for you all to make. I believe you've selected a four-person. Who's a four-person? You're the four-person. Could you read the verdict, please? Sure.
Count one, involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Madison Baldwin. Count two, involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Tate Meir. Count three, involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Hannah St. Juliana. Count four, involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling, guilty of involuntary manslaughter as to Justin Schilling.
Thank you, four-person. I'm going to ask that Ms. Williams poll the jury. So she's going to ask you each.
Jury in seat number 1, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Jury in seat number 2, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Jury in seat number 3, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 4, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes.
Jury in seat number 6, was that and is that your verdict? Jury in seat number 7, was that and is that your verdict? Jury in seat number 8, was that and is that your verdict? Jury in seat number 9, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Jury in seat number 11, was that and is that your verdict? Jury in seat number 12, was that and is that your verdict?
Yes, it is.
Jury in seat number 13, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Jury in seat number 14, was that and is that your verdict?
It is.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know how hard this has been on all of you just by reading your face. I know this has been a very hard decision. We appreciate your time. I'm going to ask you to return to the jury room, and I'll be there with you in a few minutes, all right?
All rise for the jury.
All right, you may be seated. Bond is revoked. Sentencing will be April 9th at 9 o'clock in the morning. All right. I'll allow both sides to speak to the jury if they're interested. All right.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.
If everyone can just remain seated.
Very similar to what we saw that for we'll pick that up.
These are live pictures. These are a lot of the families of the victims here. 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. He was found guilty on all 4 counts. James Crumbley following the same pattern as his wife Jennifer Crumbley, and now they will both serve the time. You see these families kissing and hugging the prosecutor there, thanking them for the state's work. It is 7:23 Eastern Time in Michigan. We are joined, luckily, by Darnell Blackburn. He joined WDI-TV, Local 4 in Detroit back in December 2022. He is the station's crime and safety expert on all platforms, and he comes to the station with years and years of law enforcement experience as a retired police officer. So Darnell, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it greatly. This is some people might get angry with me when I say this, but a bittersweet day. Never any real victors here. The state did win this case. It is a kind of a first of its kind case. Well, the wife was, but were you expecting the same verdict here as was reached with wife Jennifer Crumbley?
You know, absolutely. One of the I truly was. I mean, it's so hard for anybody of any magnitude. I don't want to say the jury that they were influenced by the previous trial, but I can say that when you talk about the idea of the evidence that was presented, a lot of the same things were presented in this trial that were presented, from the previous trial. And there were some differences as well, but a lot of things that were similar. And so the outcome being different would have been very surprising. This definitely sets a great precedence.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think most people were anticipating, but look, you had 2 different jury panels here, so who knows? I mean, it could have gone either way. What's interesting is they're both set to be sentenced on April 9th. And I think they each face up to 15 years. Do you expect the judge to be harsh here, Darnell, to give him the maximum amount of time or close to it?
That I can't speak to. I wish I could. You don't know. I mean, obviously the judge is going to take everything into account, look at all the factors, and really just make a determination based on witness or victim statements. There'll be a lot of things that'll play a part here, and the biggest thing that's just so powerful is that this sets just a really interesting precedence moving forward, and for parents in their culpability. So as far as the judge, I'm not sure. We'll have to see. I definitely know that there'll be a lot of push, obviously, from the victims' family members to give the maximum sentence for both of them. So, this is definitely, man, this is very impactful on all levels.
Yeah. Chelsea Whitaker, a few people, she says dangerous precedent set. Marcy says horrible precedent. In your opinion, Darnell, are we teetering on a fine line here when you're finding parents culpable of their children, in this case, minor children's actions, or is this the way it should be?
This won't be popular. I think I don't think that it's the idea that parents are culpable for their children's actions. It's just parents being in this particular instance. Let's just talk about it. I mean, there was journal entries that were written. There was counselors who brought things to their attention. There was so many other things that came about, and I don't think that this is necessarily exclusively saying parents should be responsible for their children's actions. It just says parents should be responsible gun owners, and parents should be responsible parents. You can't stop a child from doing something that they're going to do. However, we have an obligation to be parents. And with that being said, I think that this, there's so many of these types of situations that happen, and the parents they see signs, or they maybe even have an inkling, and they blow it off. And this will cause all of us as parents to say, I need to look into this and make sure that this doesn't happen. And we should be doing it anyway as parents, because we want our children, everybody, to be safe, but also, for our own selves as well. This is definitely interesting. Definitely interesting.
Yeah, this is for sure as a category to put it in, it would be interesting. Just some quick background. So James and Jennifer's son, Ethan, and I had a Parkland, just jogging my memory, I had a Parkland parent on a few weeks back on this story with Jennifer, and he really asked me not to play up Ethan's name, not to even mention his name, but and I'm thinking of it as I'm speaking, but this is the reason we're all here. Ethan Crumbley murdered 4 students at Oxford High School outside of Detroit back on November 30th, 2021. I believe there were 11 victims in all. 4 died as a result of this. But this is really, as Darnell keeps saying, this is the first set of parents in the United States of America to face criminal accountability for a child's school shooting. So just to reiterate, if you're watching this, YouTube lives on forever. If you're watching this 30 years from now, James and Jennifer Crumbley are the first couple in America to face criminal accountability for their child's school shooting, which resulted in the murder of 4 students and I think up to 11 victims. Jennifer Crumbley, interestingly, was convicted on all 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Same case today. James Crumbley convicted on 4 counts of involuntary manslaughter. Darnell, what does this mean for parents? I mean, sadly, we've gotten so used to this in our country. It's been a lull. It's crazy. It's been a little while since we've heard about it. I mean, there's been months where we hear about it almost weekly, but we haven't, thankfully, heard about it in a long time. But what does this mean for parents in all these different school districts around the country? Obviously, this is pertaining to Michigan, but do parents now, do they take notice of this? Do you think parents around the country take notice?
Absolutely. This case, or the crux of this case, is centered around a lot of people, the public opinion would be their parenting. And I don't know that if I were a juror that I wouldn't be considering that, to be completely transparent. However, from a lot of the information that was presented in this case, a lot of this is about responsible gun ownership. And in Michigan, the laws just recently changed in the last 2 months. About we established some red flag laws where certain people can't get guns. We've established storage laws that we didn't have on the books prior to this, and these things have been implemented because of situations like Oxford and across the country. So this is not just a lot of people feel this is about being the responsibility of a parent trying to have to control everything their child does. This is about responsible gun ownership. As a former law enforcement officer and parent of a 3 and a 5-year-old, we have guns in the house. They're put up, they're safe, they're in places where they can't. Part of the law here in Michigan states that the guns even have to be just put away out of reach of children. They don't even have to be locked per se. In this situation, some things that came out in the trial were that the gun was in a gun safe with the default code on the safe. And you got a 15, 14-year-old child there who is showing interest in gun, that you purchased a gun. And not a problem for me to do any of that, but it's about all of those things, and they play such an important role. And as a parent or a caretaker of a child, we have to make sure that we as parents and as individuals, as law enforcement, as whomever, make sure that we can make every child as safe as possible, whether it be our own or others around us. So this is monumental on all levels. And I think it does make parents say, maybe you got to examine what your child is doing. You have to examine how you are making sure that you're taking care of your child and your family, protecting and keeping everybody safe.
The victims here, Madison Baldwin, 17, Tate Meyer, 16, Justin Schilling, 17, and Hannah St. Juliana, 14. Obviously, just super tragic. I was just speaking to the victim of a homicide that is unsolved, the mother. It's a year after the fact. These families, Darnell, the victims' families, they never fully recover.
They don't. And look at these beautiful young people. And if I could just share the story of one of them, of Tate Meir.
Yeah.
Tate was a football player at the school, a standout football player at the high school. Oxford is significantly, probably about 30 miles from Detroit. It's pretty far away, but this young man, speaking of him and all of them, beautiful, bright students, but this young man tried to stop the shooter. I'm not going to say his name. He tried to stop him. He saved or did his best to rescue not just himself, but he actually charged him, tried to save him, and lost his life. And so, the impact of this, not just here, but worldwide. And you have these young people whose lights are now no longer lit. They're gone. So, this is just very, very powerful. And like I keep saying, it is so impactful because it should reverberate around this country, and it should make everybody examine themselves and examine their children and making sure their kids are safe and every other child is safe.
Allie Hunter pointing out it's 15 years per count, 4 counts. That's 60 years potentially. I'll be curious to see on April 9th what the sentencing is for them. A question for Darnell here, and then we'll kind of run through how this trial played out. But do you think, Darnell, that this will change parental responsibility in future child criminal cases, not just shootings, but gangbangers, carjackings, etc.? Will parents now have more of a liability?
If that parent is shown or proven to have not done everything they can, and again, let me speak to the gun safety laws here. If they have a gun that's accessible to a child, that is not locked, that is not put in a high place if you have minor children in the house, absolutely. I think that this is a very daring move by the prosecutor in Oakland County, Karen McDonald. Very daring to step out and say, we need to make a change in this country, and it speaks volumes for somebody saying that things need to change, and the laws speak to the fact that we can change things. So absolutely, I think this will make parents a lot more culpable when it happens, and it's proven that they could have possibly mitigated or prevented these circumstances from happening.
The COE just put this up. Involuntary manslaughter happens when a person's death resulted from another person's negligent or criminal actions. That is the case here. 4 teens were murdered, 6 teens were injured, and a teacher was shot. So that does make 11 victims in total, 4 of whom died. So a tragedy all around, obviously. We do know this is a country where citizens, there's a Second Amendment, and they love their guns, and there's a constant battle back and forth between gun owners and those who aren't, enamored by guns. But here, I saw a bunch of comments. Children should not have guns, and that seems very straightforward, Darnell. If you're a minor child, you have no business having a gun, right?
People have their opinions. Speaking to children owning a gun, a child owning a gun, absolutely not. And people have different opinions about teaching children how to use guns. I've seen some in law enforcement, some situations where there have been 3rd or 4th graders who know how to use guns. If it's, people have the right to decide whatever they want. I don't want to speak to people and their feelings about whether or not a person, a responsible adult owning a gun can own a gun, and what they do for their children, how they decide to expose them to it. That's a household thing. But again, you need to be mindful that when you expose your child to this type of gun, to a gun or a weapon, and if something happens and it's proven that child had access to it, you're now in a position where you're negligent if somebody's harmed and killed because of it. You're negligent. So, personally, let me speak from my law enforcement experience, from having, when my other children, I have older children and younger children. My older children were young and they were kids. I come in the house and I let them see it. I didn't let them touch it. And I'm speaking 5, 6, 7 years old. This is a gun. This is what it can do to you. This is what can happen. I want you to look at it. You don't have to touch it. I want you to see it. I want you to understand that. And, see, daddy comes home with this. Here's why he has it. This is that. Now with younger children, they don't know where it is. They don't need to know where it is. I'm not a police officer currently, so I'm not carrying it. So the curiosity, as they may progress and they get a little older, I'll expose them to what it can do and what it is. But we just have to be cognizant. And then here's the other part. We know our kids. We know our children. That is, and if you don't, then we need to get to know our children and know, what their hot buttons are, or how mature they are, what they can handle and what they can't, and not give them that responsibility. There were so many situations in this case where, this young man is crying out for help on all levels, and the parents just deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There were too many red flags here, and I think that's why they were both convicted. But Kaylin raises, what's up, COE? We'll get to you in 1 second, COE. But Kaylin raises a good point here. Will parents have to start hiding their car keys? I think that is the criticism with this set of convictions is, where do you draw the line? Because let's say you have a 15-year-old takes the car, is drunk, and kills someone. Is the parent now responsible in that situation? It gets murky, doesn't it, Darnell?
Let's be reasonable and be clear. Negligence is a big word, and negligence is when a child does something. we're talking something deliberately and intentionally. How about that? We're speaking of that. And if a child gets in the car and they drink, or anybody gets in the car and they've been drinking and driving, there's some intentionality with that. But let's be clear. I think judges are I think prosecutors, I think they're reasonable enough to say, or even if the prosecutor isn't, they make an attempt to charge someone with these types of things. We have to be reasonable and say, listen, it's one thing if you got car keys, your kid takes the keys and goes joyriding and he harms somebody. It's another thing when you take a gun to a school with the intent of killing people. That's two different things. And so, yeah, you open up the door for some subjectiveness, but again, we just have to be reasonable. And the big thing is negligence and the intentionality of a criminal act.
Yeah, and Darnell, we're going to get to COE here, otherwise known as my wife, and her real name is
Well, you better get to her. Don't get me in trouble.
But Turadot has a question. Will the dad be in the same prison as Ethan? Well, he hasn't been sentenced yet, but I'm almost sure, Darnell, that they will not be in the same state prison, right?
No, most likely. That is highly unlikely. They won't do that.
They'll keep them separate. COE, you've been watching this case day in and day out. Are you surprised by this?
You know what? I'm not surprised. And according to our poll, I believe 75% of the audience that's been watching believe that he would be found guilty. I do want to point out some interesting facts. So for Jennifer Crumbley's verdict, the jurors spent about 10 hours and 48 minutes-ish deliberating.
But you guys didn't know the COE is Rain Woman. She comes out with facts. She does this to me with receipts whenever I get in trouble.
Yeah,
this and this. Go ahead, COE.
Okay. But what's interesting about this is, for those of us who have been watching this trial and we've been on trial watch, the timing is very, very similar. And we were trying to figure out just amongst ourselves whether or not they were going to take a longer or shorter time. And they really took almost the exact time, obviously two very different juries. But I did want to share some interesting facts about this jury. And I'm not quite sure about the jury makeup for Jennifer Crumbley's trial. But I know that here it was 12 jurors, 6 women, 6 men, and half of them were gun owners. And I just want to give you an idea of who these jurors were that made these decisions. For the 6 women, there was a stay-at-home mother with her 3 kids. She also has foster care at home. There was a pregnant woman who has 2 young kids. There was a retired widowed mother of 3 grown children. She has many guns in the house. Then there was a married woman with 2 daughters in their 20s. She also has a lot of guns in the house, but she says that their guns are always locked in a safe. Then there's a married woman with grown children. She says that she owns a shotgun and a rifle for hunting. I'm live right now, baby. Can you give me 2 minutes?
Welcome to the Waldman residence.
Hey, mine are upstairs and quiet. That's what I got going on. I came to the basement.
There he is. There he is. A little UFC fighter right there. J-Mac, get lost. Go ahead.
Okay. No, because we're discussing something very serious, sweetie. But this juror says that she always stores her guns unloaded and doesn't keep ammunition close by. And then the 6th woman is a retired single female nurse who does not have any experience with guns. So that was the breakdown of the women. Thank you, sweetie. And for men, it was, again, very similar. Half of them did not have any experience with guns, and the other half did. And they made it very clear during jury selection that while they do have guns, they are very careful with whom they leave them around and how they control that. So I'm going to hop off here just because I have all the kids coming in. But I just wanted to share the breakdown because, again, the people that were making this very heavy decision, half of them do have experience with guns. They have guns at home. And so they did have a different perspective than someone that didn't have guns, which I know a lot of people were concerned about who the jurors were and how they would be able to vote on this important decision.
Only in 2024 can you mom. She's also, by the way, painting the bathroom white. She just this is a very I come home today and there's paint everywhere. So she's doing analysis, painting a bathroom, and being a mother. All this is what happens now.
While you're slacking, Joe. While you're slacking, great job slacking.
In fairness to me, thank God.
You're killing me, man. You're killing me.
Thankfully, I just got done with another podcast, so I've got an excuse. But as far as the trial goes, and I think it's just important to point out what the COE said, there were a lot of the cases paralleled each other. Closing arguments were just yesterday, and the jury did start deliberating. So I think the COE said it was 10 plus hours of deliberation, but the state came out here swinging and basically portrayed James, as they did with Jennifer Crumbley, as a careless and neglectful father, and that he basically bought his troubled son a gun and then failed to secure it. I mean, there were so many red flags here, Darnell. I mean, this is a kid who obviously had emotional problems, and the parents just turned a blind eye to it. But just to make matters that much worse, they decide as a Christmas gift to buy him a gun. I mean, it's just it's bordering on insanity. I don't know what their mindset is, but obviously it's not rational in any way.
Yeah. That is the insanity was the exact word that I heard before you said it. It does, and I think again, this does make everyone start to examine what their thought process is as parents, what your children's thought. I mean, you know, none of these young people, no kids have asked to be here, and unfortunately, we chose to be parents, and parenting is a job. It is a serious job, and it comes with responsibility, not just for you to train and teach your child, but responsibility to monitor what your child is doing or not put them in a position where they have access to things to harm other people. And this just really is a powerful incident. I think that this hopefully will make people examine themselves, examine their children, examine what they have in the home, and just realize, hey, we need to take more of an interest in everything and make sure that, I mean, it's sad the fact that, like, here's what gets lost, Joe. Let's think about what's lost. What's lost is, number one, these innocent people, and when I say lost, not in the fact that we're not mentioning it, we're not talking about it, but number one, these innocent kids. Number two, let's even speak of the shooter. With obviously he's a kid with some issues that were never even addressed. These beautiful kids are gone. This guy who is a wayward kid with all kinds of issues is not tended to, and you got parents who initially, let's go back to this, and this is, I'm not speaking to this in the trial, but who initially ran when they were told that they could possibly be charged. I don't know if your viewers or what do they call it? Tell me again, Joe.
STS Nation.
Yes, the nation. If the nation knows that these two ran and hid, they literally screw our son. He's already in jail. We're running and we're hiding. Like, are you kidding me? Where's the culpability for even, number one, your baby is because if nobody else should love the shooter, parents should, regardless. I mean, it doesn't say that he gets excused for his actions. He's their son. And what happened from the very beginning, they left. They put this kid out the pasture. They jumped in the car and they ran and drove 40 or 20, 30 miles to Detroit and was hiding until they could try to go somewhere else till the police found them. This is absolutely, it's ludicrous. It's insane.
Yeah, and this is the toughest part, because in many ways, and I'm going to get hate mail for this, but in many ways, this young shooter is also a victim, even though he's also the suspect and the perpetrator. But it says C-Star here, I think, agrees with me. Ethan was on his own. He really needed help. I'm not one of these guys that's just going to make a blanket statement across the board like this guy is evil. I think he was a young child, very, very troubled child. He committed an unforgivable act, and he's going to serve a lifetime in prison for that. But when you read things like this, They regularly, his parents dosed him with their own stash of Xanax. I mean, this kid was victimized himself. Again, I'm not saying what he did. I'm not condoning it in any way, shape, or form. He did a horrific criminal act, took the lives of 4 people. He injured 6 other students, 1 other teacher. What he did is really unforgivable. But the way he, the way he was brought up, the way he was raised, the way he was nurtured by his parents, he really wasn't. So was he a victim from the very beginning? I mean, Darnell, is this something that we can even talk about without people getting incensed about it?
Joe, I don't. I mean, you're getting me. You're hitting me with this one, and I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm looking at Olenika, your comment. Yeah, they ran away. He absolutely is a victim as well. He absolutely is a victim as well. And I mean, I just, as a parent on all levels, as a parent as his parents should possibly be, as a parent of the victims should possibly be, this is just, it's so massive, and it's so unforgivable on all levels, from the fact that if I was one of those parents, I don't know if I could forgive him. I don't know if I definitely can't forgive. On one thing, Joe, I'm sorry, I'm all over the place, but how about this? I mean, the parents are more culpable. Let's just be real. If you think about it, we're talking about a 15-year-old kid whose brain, the male brain doesn't get developed to 26. He's talking about 15-year-old kids. They're more culpable. They're more responsible than he is, to be honest, if you think about it. So is he a victim? Absolutely. Is it, do you still have a gauge of right and wrong? Yeah, you do. So, this is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, he's a victim. But and those parents, they are more responsible, because you're talking about a 15-year-old child whose brain's not developed, that you just left in the lurch. You just put him out there to pasture.
And we're joined now by Martin Radner, brother counsel, who's in Michigan following this case. Brother counsel, good to see you. I've seen some of your work. You do amazing work. I know you've been following this from the very beginning. Your reaction to the 4 counts guilty on involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Joel. Nice to meet you also. First time on the show, so that's always special. Even though the circumstances are not, talking about this horrific murder, it's not the greatest circumstances. But my reaction to the verdict is, I guess it's not surprising. It's a very emotionally charged trial. They showed pictures of the victims. They had videos. They didn't show this to the public, obviously, but the jury got to see it all. And it's not surprising. The fact that they took so long, I think there was certainly what to think about. It's really, if you're able to separate that emotion about looking at the elements of what involuntary manslaughter means, and if the prosecution has shown that throughout the trial, I certainly think there was a case for a guilty verdict. And I think that there could have been a case also for either a hung jury or a not guilty verdict. But I look at this more from the lawyer's, perspective, as I do than just a person just watching and feeling very emotionally involved with this. Everybody wants justice. Everybody wants justice for the victims. The families were sitting there throughout the trial. If you think that doesn't make an impression on the jury, obviously it does. So you just want to make sure as a lawyer that they're actually making their determination based on the facts and the evidence, and not just their emotions. And that's a very tall order of any defense attorney when you're dealing with these 4 very innocent young children, and they're seeing pictures of them all day, and they heard the autopsy reports, and it's a very tough job for a defense attorney to be able to actually get a hung jury or a not guilty verdict in this case. So, it's not surprising, after we all saw what happened with Jennifer Crumbley. But I think there could have been a case, that there was reasonable doubt what exactly James knew. What did he know? When did he know it? Those journal entries were very damaging for him, obviously. If you take the word of the shooter, that he was actually going to his parents for help. And if you take those text messages that he was sending to his friend literally, that he was actually asking his parents for help. I mean, if all that is true, then the guilty verdict is the right verdict. The question is, like the defense attorney said, did he actually tell his parents? Was he complaining to his parents, or is this just teenagers talking about what they, pretend to tell their parents, or what they're just to make themselves look more of a victim to each other? So, it's I guess, it's not surprising, but like I said, I could have heard the verdict, being either a hung verdict or a hung jury or a not guilty as well. So that's just the lawyer's, lens. So
Yeah. I feel like it really could have gone any which way, but the fact that Jennifer Crumbley proceeded here, I think most people were anticipating a similar outcome, which it in fact was. David Morrissey, Love Brother Counsel, here he is. His channel is awesome. Heart emoji, Brother Counsel. And then this person joining from the lawyer Jay joining from the lawyer we love the lawyer a rising tide, as we say on STS, lifts all ships. That is a quote from Steve Cohen, who quoted it from someone else, but I don't know the original quotee. But best guess proven. It is not just a tagline. So Brother Counsel, just back to you. And I was talking about this with Darnell Blackburn, who was a police officer in was it Auburn Hills?
Auburn Hills, yeah.
yeah, I'm well aware. His name precedes him.
Yeah,
I hope that's a good thing, Brother Counsel.
Yeah, it's only good.
I don't know. You're a defense attorney. I don't know. Can it be good with you?
Well, actually, I'm not really a defense attorney. I really practice mostly civil work. So
okay,
I've had my stint in the courtroom on all sides, but mostly what my bread and butter is now is civil work, personal injury.
All right, gotcha. Thank
you. So, brother, what about this being kind of this precedent-setting case? I mean, these are the first set of parents in America to face criminal accountability for a child school shooting. What's interesting is I thought I was going to take so much heat for this, saying that Ethan is in fact a victim of this as well. But just looking at the comments, the majority of people tend to agree with me. What does this do for, well, this was my question. I didn't even see it, but she's asking the same question. Do you think this will change parental responsibility from Nancy B. in future child criminal cases? Gangbang, we already put this up, CLE, but this was a question from earlier. What does this do in terms of future cases, not just homicides?
Well, in terms of what you said about the shooter being a victim here also, if all those journal entries were true and those text messages to his friend that he was constantly going to his parents and his parents were kind of just poo-pooing him and giving him some Xanax and melatonin and telling him to just suck it up, then he is somewhat a victim in this case. He should have gotten help years ago and none of this would have happened. His friend ended up, his only friend ended up in a institution, I think was in Wisconsin, helping him with his, mental health problems. So I think you have a point there, Joel. If that the shooter could have been a victim in this case as well. As terms of the precedent, I think, some of the things that I mentioned in my channel when I was analyzing this case, that's an important part of this case. And it should be, the jury should understand that this is history. And if they decide, you want to be on the right side of history, right? So is this the side that you want to be on? And absolutely, it's going to open the door for prosecutions. Probably we're going to see, we might, I don't want to say probably, but it certainly opens the door for prosecution on all of these minors that are committing crimes. What did the parents know at the time? Could they avoided it? Every parent has a duty, as we heard from the prosecutor, every parent has a duty to ensure that their minor child is not a danger to society. And if they don't use ordinary care and getting into the legalese, gross negligence, absolutely, they can be held responsible and criminally culpable, as we just saw in this case. So is it opening the door? Yeah. And are we going to be seeing a lot more prosecutions like this? I would imagine so. And especially, like if this would have come down as not guilty or hung jury, then, maybe other prosecutors would think twice about it, but both successful. But again, this is a very extreme case. You have 4 teenagers, it was a school shooting, it's very drastic. So are we going to see this in regular, I don't want to call it regular crime, but in crime that are not as emotionally charged? I don't know, but it's certainly absolutely opens the door, and we may be seeing a lot of this as it comes down. So, and I think something that I stressed on my channel, I don't know if you want to keep talking, but lawyers keep talking unless you shut us up.
I love it. Keep going.
Just lost my train of thought there. But I mean, one of the big parts, I think, of this trial, which if you're approaching this from the defense attorney, that you have to really stress and explain to the jury, is what gross negligence actually means. And I think that it could be confusing exactly the difference between negligence and gross negligence. And this is something that I explain a lot on my channel, that, you know, if the jury, you have to explain to the jury, you can find that my client, in this case, James Crumbley, or whoever the next parent is, was negligent. And he should have done things that he didn't do, or, you know, but does that rise to the level of gross negligence, which is reckless disregard? You know, it's a much higher standard. And I think if that was stressed more to the jury during jury selection, and from the reports that I saw during jury selection, by the way, I actually went down to the courthouse, Joel, because it's in literally my backyard. I went down to the courthouse to try to actually sit in on the jury selection, because they don't live stream it, as you know. And I wanted to get a firsthand glance and to see what some of the questions are. And I was met by 3 deputies at the door who weren't allowing anybody in unless you're either a potential juror or if you were a recognized media outlet. So Brother Counsel is not yet a recognized media outlet. But from what the questions that I've seen from the reporting that was done there, Channel 4, whoever else was there, it didn't seem that this was a theme during jury selection. I didn't hear it much during opening statement, and I heard very little bit in closing argument. And I think that this is an important thing that the jury has to understand. What exactly does gross negligence mean, and what type of standard we're holding the parents to? You know, it's not just, yeah, every parent has you have a duty to do, to exercise ordinary care to make sure your minor child doesn't endanger other people. But for involuntary manslaughter specifically, that's not the standard. The standard is gross negligence, reckless disregard. And in this case, it may have been there, but I'm just saying, you know, it is a very high burden. And I think
that's an interesting distinction. And C. Taylor reminding us that was one of the jury questions related to that today. Darnell, someone in the chat, I couldn't catch the name. They said this isn't just about negligence. It's about foreseeability, meaning the parents should have foreseen this coming. That's another element to this. Do you agree with that? Because there were all these red flags, and apparently he was leaving his diary or his journal. You know, he's just leaving it on the kitchen table. If I'm a parent, I'm going to look at what my kid's writing. I mean, they had to know what was going on, but yet they didn't. So is it also about anticipating the actions in your opinion?
I'm not a lawyer like Brother Counsel, but I'm gonna throw on a legal hat. I mean, foreseeability is not a thing unless you have that gift.
Yeah,
you can't tell. Now, what you can do is you can parent, and you can know your children, and you can look at documents. There's no expectation of privacy from a child. You know, those things you can do. And so I think not as much foreseeability as it is just accountability as a parent. And you know, I love Brother Counsel. Thank you for being here, because I didn't want none of this lawyer stuff. I mean, I know that my feeling can be skewed as a law enforcement officer. I'm thinking about this from that perspective of looking at how many lives can possibly be saved, and how many carjackings may be prevented, or how many school shootings may be stopped. From that perspective, it's good. But it also adds another level of work for a law enforcement officer: due diligence, more investigating, more detailed in their questions. It adds a lot of things. So, but foreseeability, there's no way to foresee it. It's just accountability more than anything. And when I say that, just to be to your accountable as a parent, to really recognize and not put them in a position to easily be harmed. Hey, Joe, I got a question. If I could ask Brother Counsel,
100%.
This is, I'm sorry, I stole the show. Sorry, brother. I give it back.
It's all you, man. Make my job easier.
Joel, you're throwing me to the wolves here.
No, it's all good, brother. It's all good, literally. No, but what is that? my thought process has always been, what does this say about Karen McDonald, the Oakland County prosecutor, to be daring enough to go out? I mean, this is it's you know, I, some lawyers grandstand. I'm not saying that. Some lawyers really are passionate. What does this just say? For her to even say, this is a major milestone case. And a lot of people don't know, Joel, that a police officer can feel somebody is guilty is everything, is sin.
Mm.
And you can put together a package, you bring it to the prosecutor, you feel like you got all the elements of the crime, and the prosecutor will say, nope, come back with more. Or they'll say, nope, we don't have it. What does this say about, Karen McDonald as a prosecutor to make the decision to do this take this groundbreaking case and prosecute it, and trust, I guess, even the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, the police agency that's handling it, to move forward?
Yeah, Brother Counsel, I'm going to jump in real quick and then let you answer that question. But that's a great point, because it is obviously a high stakes case for the state. But she came out in state closings, which were yesterday, and basically she talked about how these anxious parents of the victims, were looking for their kids that day. She really came in with the emotion and the gravitas with it. She said 4 children, this is a direct quote, 4 children died that day because James Crumbley did nothing, and went on to say he knew his son had access to the gun, and then took his son to the shooting range 8 times in the year before this happened. So I didn't mean to jump in there myself, but Brother Counsel, you are the only lawyer on this panel. So, obviously very powerful closing arguments, but what about Darnell's point that it was a high stakes game for the state here?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to have to direct you to my latest video on the closing arguments. If you go to my channel, you can check that out, because I explained this part, and I explained how my approach would be to this part if I was a defense attorney defending this. But to Darnell's point, Karen McDonald, first of all, obviously she doesn't try cases that much. She's the lead Oakland County prosecutor. She's not in the courtroom all day. So this is why people will be saying, well, she's just doing this for the cameras, and she's doing this, to get out there and make history. And this is, it's just one big publicity grab, and some people are saying that. But the Karen McDonald that I know cares very deeply about this. And obviously this case, I believe that this case, and first of all, she's a prolific lawyer. Even if you don't try cases, she's already been there, done that. She was a judge. She knows what she's doing in the courtroom. She doesn't have to prove herself anymore. So the fact that she's taking this case can either mean one of two things. Either like Darnell was suggesting, from a lot of other people are saying that this is just for publicity and all that, or it means so much to her that she really very much wants to be part of it. And these 4 victims and the school shooting, and she takes it so much to heart, and she really, really cares about it. And that's why she put herself that I'm actually going to try this case next to Mark Keast. And by the way, Mark Keast could have done this trial but he's an amazing also. And, that was a really great team. And I go through the opening statements and closing, and they really, really did a fantastic job as a prosecuting team. And it's a team that it's tough to go up against, but she did an amazing job, and she came across as authentic. She didn't come across that she was doing it for the cameras and all that. Now, was she putting on a good show? That's what some people will say. That's not the Karen McDonald that I know. And I just think that the reason why she was so passionate about this is because she just really cares about it, and it touches her on a very deep level. And again, it doesn't mean that she should have gotten a conviction. And I think that there could have been tactics and strategies how to combat what she was doing, which I go through on my channel. But
by the way, Brother Counsel, for those who are new to you, where do they find you?
Well, Brother Counsel, just type that into YouTube. You'll find my channel, and you can get the whole. James Crumbley I covered, Jennifer Crumbley I covered, and maybe more so James. I actually did a live with I have a brother who's also Brother Counsel has a brother who's been a criminal defense attorney for 14 years, does civil rights, and I had him on also for a live discussing the different strategies, how to deal with this type of case and the high publicity, and And he's been, if you Google Solomon Radner, you'll see a whole bunch of stuff. So
You need a sister. You got to have sister counsel. But do you also have and do you also have an audio podcast, or is it just on YouTube?
right now it's just on YouTube. I'm kind of a newbie to this space, Joel. You got to teach me a few things. I just started my channel a few months ago. Really jumped into it by the Charlie Adelson case, and I haven't looked back yet. But I've been less than a year, so I'm still kind of gaining my feet into this whole, YouTube place and podcasts and all that. So maybe you'll give me a private session.
Yeah, I'm hoping that you will get sub to Brother Counsel right there. We Steve Cohen, I'll say it again, a rising tide lifts all ships, and we will do whatever we can to help you. First and foremost, by inviting you back as a best guest frequently. That way we can promote your channel, and you can do
Look,
our.
if I have something to add, if you think I have something to add, I'm happy to come.
100%, man, 100%. By the way, Martin is obviously a of the Jewish faith. I can see the yarmulke, and let me tell you, my father passed away, and I share this story just to get off the beaten path for 1 second here. And in the Jewish tradition, my father was close to 90. It was one of the hardest things I ever dealt with. But you say the Kaddish. Now Martin would be much better. He'd probably go 3 times a day or twice a day. I went every day for 11 months, except when I couldn't, if I was traveling or something. And when I would
that
go,
does a lot for his soul, Joe.
What's that?
It does a lot for his soul.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it does a lot for my soul too, just to connect with him. But the point of this story, there's a point I'm getting to eventually, is I went to a very religious synagogue when I did this. And when you go in there, and this goes back 5,000 plus years, the Jews have been studying the Talmud, the oral law, and they sit across from each other and they argue with each other, and they talk about things from the olden days, like if someone borrows a lamb from you and you don't give the lamb back, these sorts of things. And this, I'm witnessing this now, this reincarnation in 2024. The Jewish people have been going back and forth and arguing and studying law for many, many years. And my point is why Martin Radner is an amazing attorney, why his brother is an amazing attorney. And it's sort of in our blood. So I'm happy, Martin, that you're out there, you're doing it. And we'll obviously do everything we can to lift the channel. But back to this for a few moments. People were asking about the civil lawsuit. Is that going to follow almost 100%?
Okay, so something that you should know about the civil lawsuit. The Jennifer and James Crumbley can be sued, but they won't be sued. The reason why they're not going to be sued in civil court is because no attorney would take that case because they have no assets, and therefore there's no money in it. So, in terms of justice, the justice has been served already. They're going to be spending many years behind bars. The school, Oxford School, is in middle of a lawsuit, which is filed by a national trial attorney named Venn Johnson Law. And he's representing some of the victims. I'm not sure which victims, but some of the victims' families, he's representing them against the Oxford School. And it's a different standard. It's a little bit complicated, and I haven't actually done a deep dive into the Oxford. It's not a simple cause of action, should we call it? But the Oxford School District is being sued right now for whether they did enough. And we heard a lot about that in this trial as well. Should the school counselor have taken more immediate measures? Should the principal have done something? All these signs, math sheets. So that's a civil lawsuit that's going to be filed. That's in the process right now of being litigated. And if that goes to trial, I'll tell you right now, that is going to be a very interesting trial, because Venn Johnson is a probably maybe top 10, 20 trial lawyer in the entire United States, probably. And he is going to be a very interesting to watch if that actually goes to trial. So, but in terms of James and Jennifer, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, they don't have the assets. But Darnell, back to you. So in the closing arguments, the state obviously points out that the school calls that morning and warns about this violent drawing that Ethan Crumbley had made. The parents leave and the son stays, and then this whole incident happens. I imagine that was really hard for the jury to get around, that the parents just took off. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a parent perspective, again, how do you just my kid does this, and I'm yanking him out. What's wrong with you? I'm what is going on? I'm collaring him, I'm shaking him, I'm taking him to a counselor, I'm doing everything I can. It's so hard to wrap your mind around that. It's insanity, seriously, it's almost as if they just were just like, we're sick of this kid, we're gonna let him do this, let him go to prison, and we can be rid of him and we can just live our lives. That's really almost that's only my personal feeling, or my personal feeling, but it just seems so irrational that it would be this way. So yeah, a lot of that is definitely an issue. It's huge.
Brother counsel, I'm just curious, aside from the legal issues, and I'm not sure if you're a parent or not, because we're just meeting for the very first time right now. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on the shooter himself. Lindsay Shea says, I try to avoid the shooter's name, but I was
on my
saying
channel we don't mention him either.
Yeah. I mean, I was just saying before you got on that I do view him as a victim, because he had these parents that were very neglectful and he was crying out for help. Do you see it that way or no?
Well, like I said, I kind of spoke about this, but yeah, if we assume that everything that he wrote about in his journal and what he was texting his friends about, how he was begging his parents for help and they just completely told him to suck it up, then he is in some way a victim. I get your point, Joel, and I would agree with you in a sense that
it's very controversial. It's controversial, but
if it's true, if everything is true, and this is a kid that's calling out for help, then
right.
I think
let's cut into this. This is the state speaking
like to
here. Press
the mothers
conference.
and fathers standing to the right and
Oakland
left of
County
me.
Prosecutor Karen McDonald, right here.
It has taken unwavering courage. I will forever remain in awe of their strength and perseverance that they have shown in the last 2.5 years. This verdict does not bring back their children, but it does mark a moment of accountability and will hopefully be another step to address and end and prevent gun violence. These were egregious facts in this case. These parents could have prevented this tragedy that was foreseeable with just the smallest of efforts. They could have prevented this shooting and saved these kids' lives and protected the hundreds of kids in the school that day and all of the members of the Oxford community that it devastated. With just basic, reasonable, ordinary care. This prosecution is important. The 3 prosecutions and convictions are critical. But we will not solve gun violence with these 3 prosecutions. Gun violence is the #1 cause of death for children in this country, and it is a public health crisis. And we will not be able to address it until we start treating it like a public health crisis. And yes, access to guns is a critical piece of that, but it's not the only piece. We have to focus on prevention, and that's going to require us to understand and accept that it's not just one thing. It's the #1 cause of death for children in this country. So I refuse to take a victory lap with these prosecutions. It will not bring back these kids. We have a lot more work to do. I've started the commission to address gun violence, and we are working towards a comprehensive approach, and we have hundreds of dedicated people in all different fields to do this. And I hope that this attention that you're focused on this case, one, I hope it is always about victims. I hope the constant naming of these people and photos of them will shift to focus on the people standing here, the victims, the kids in that school, the hundreds of kids with not one mark on them that will forever be changed. Let's focus on those people. Let's focus on what we can do to prevent this from happening again. That's where we should be focusing. That's where we should be working. That's my focus. That's my office's focus. And it will be far after I leave this office, which I'm not planning on doing anytime soon. So, and finally, I want to introduce the parents who are standing beside me. This is one small step of accountability, but they want more accountability. And I am proud to stand with them in that endeavor. I'm not going to say their names. I'm going to tell them who you are, tell you who they are. Madison Baldwin's mother, Tate Mears' father, Hannah's father, and Justin's father. They're standing here with me today, and I invite them to make remarks if they want to. But first, if Lieutenant Tim Willis would like to make some remarks. Would you like to make some remarks?
No, thank you.
Okay, he does not want to make remarks.
No, thank you.
Who would like to speak? Steve? Nicole?
So first of all, I just want to thank Prosecutor McDonald and Prosecutor Keese for the marvelous job that they've done putting in the long hours, them and their team, as well as Lieutenant Willis, Agent Brandon, and the whole law enforcement team that got us to this point. But we're not done. As Ms. McDonald said, these are just the beginning steps. There is so much more that absolutely must be done. It's crazy the way that our society is currently reacting to this. Our children are dying on a daily basis in mass murders. And we do very little about it. We complain about Second Amendment rights, or we say, oh, there's not enough money to put again for mental health issues. You name it, there'll be an argument against it. It's the #1 killer of our kids, folks. We can put people on the moon. We can build skyscrapers, huge monuments like the Hoover Dam, and we can't keep our kids safe in schools. I think people just need to wake up and take action. Stop accepting the excuses. Stop buying the rhetoric. It is not a Democratic or a Republican issue. It's nonpartisan. Do not accept any excuse from any of the politicians. This needs to be solved, and it needs to be solved now. We do not want any other parents to go through what we've gone through. It's as simple as that. That's all I have to say today. Thank you.
I'm Buck Meir, Tate's dad. First of all, I want to thank Karen and Mark, Lieutenant Willis, Special Agent Brandon. We met a couple folks that did some work behind the scenes. You guys obviously busted your tails, and we appreciate it. And you know, I kind of want to echo what Steve was saying here. This is a deep issue, and it's not going to be an easy one to solve. And it's more than the gun. Our kids are not doing well these days. We're in a mental health crisis. So the gun is just a tool. So we got to look at other things other than the gun. We got to see what we can do to support these kids better. And that both parties should be looking at that. This is a nonpartisan issue. We need to solve this because no parent should go through the hell we're going through. And lastly, we've taken care of 3 legs of November 30th. And there's still a 4th leg, and that's the school. And it's time for the school to pony up, to break up that administration country club. And it's time for change. Because we've got 4 kids here dead. And nobody wants to take any accountability. That needs to start tomorrow. Thank you very much.
My name's Nicole Beausoleil. I'm Madison's mom. And I will echo what Steve and Buck has mentioned. I do want to thank the prosecution team, Karen, David, Mark, the advocates, everybody that worked on the case. They have really been that piece that's kind of held us together and really pushed for us and made sure that every step we took, we kept continuing forward. But what I really want to thank is the 3 families that stand with me. This has been a really hard road. And the friendships that I've made with these families are friendships that I wish I didn't have to make the way I did, but these people are some of my best friends, and I thank them more than they will ever know. What I want to say mostly is, yeah, we have a verdict now. We have a guilty verdict for both parents. We have crossed those 3 lines of getting accountability on that end. But right now we have a verdict. We have to execute that verdict. We have to plan for change. We have to reinforce it. This is not just a verdict for attention or media. This is a verdict that actually needs to be put to the platform that it is. How are we gonna use this verdict to actually make that change that needs? We need to start focusing on the school and its failures, the things that they don't want to admit to. That's going to be our next plan for change. They are going to see these families rise up against it, and we will be here fighting every second for our children because they are not allowed to forget any of them. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Craig Schilling, Justin's father. I'd like to start out addressing Karen and the prosecuting team. Thank you so much for your hard work. I can't thank you enough for your efforts in all of this. I'm humbled to be in your presence. Thank you. My heart's beating out of my chest. I'm shaking and so nervous to be here, and I appreciate all of you for your time here. And I really can't say enough about the importance of what we just went through. It's a monumental decision, and the verdict was the same. And I believe that moving forward, it's very important as a society to set the right example for our children and future generations, and come together and use our power of thought and our power of emotion and everything. We can change. We can push forward. We can get through the difficulties of life together if we try. We can't turn our heads to these kind of problems that we face today. It's so important to emphasize the necessity of going after and holding those accountable for their insufficiencies, so to speak. That's where we're at. We have to move forward. We've put much behind us, but there's still so much there in front of us. And I stand with everybody, with these families here, and with Karen and the prosecution, and hopefully with many others, to work on that change that we need, and to go that extra mile and put forth that extra effort to address these problems. I can never imagine being here, and I don't ever want anybody else to have to be here like this. This is a very difficult thing to go through. But I'm happy to have these people here helping me, and all the advocates, all the community members, everybody that has given so much and helped out so much. I thank you all, and I look forward to the future. Hopefully it's a brighter one. Thank you.
We have time for some brief questions.
Karen,
Yes.
is there a message to parents because of these verdicts?
I think it's the message that every single one of us would have before these prosecutions started. You're obligated to use ordinary and reasonable care, and you owe a duty to other kids in that school, in the community, and you're required to exercise ordinary care. It's an egregious set of facts, And, I stood here 2.5 years ago, and I said, this started with one question: where did he get that gun? Where did he get it? And how did he get it? And that is a question that every single one of us as mothers and fathers asked. And
Hey, Joel, I'm muted. I'm muted because our guests have to leave in a few minutes. So you are on mute right now, Joel. If you can unmute yourself.
All right. So we'll keep them muted. Darnell, just your reaction to this press conference. I already forgot that Karen McDonald spoke at the beginning because I was so taken aback in a very moving way by the parents. What did you think of what those parents just said?
I think that my heart is broken as a parent. Sidebar, I lost one of my sons last year very unexpectedly, not to violence, but he passed. He was 28, very unexpectedly.
Sorry to hear that.
And thank you. As a parent, to lose a child in any capacity is devastating. As a parent, to lose one to violence, you always want to blame. When you lose your child, there's always this thing of you want to be able to say something, put that somewhere, and they justifiably can put it somewhere. And I just appreciate them channeling their actions and putting this to change. There's no doubt in my mind. I do believe, as Brother Counsel said, that Karen McDonald is that. Thank you. That Karen McDonald is passionate about this for the right reasons. And I believe that this is a change that we need to see in our society today, to start holding people accountable, and from a law enforcement perspective, so that I don't have to hear of any other kids being killed or to minimize or mitigate these types of situations. So I'm just grateful that there's a change. there's a change, and in this. So just grateful.
Yeah. Thank you for those words. Darnell, is it you that has to jump right now, or both of you guys?
I need to jump because
Okay.
unfortunately I have to go to bed. I got
Okay.
an early morning on TV.
All right, Darnell, thank you so much. Appreciate your help. And we'll call on you
Joe,
soon. Thank you, Darnell.
Yeah, before I go, Joe, can I shout out my YouTube channel? I don't do a
Yeah,
podcast.
I didn't know.
I
Yeah,
got a
please,
YouTube channel. Yeah, it's just my name, Darnell Blackburn, YouTube channel, and then you can find me on these social media platforms. I just try to inspire, encourage, and uplift people. Facebook, Instagram, also LinkedIn, whatever. But Darnell Z Blackburn, I think, is on some levels. But just trying to inspire and change the world. I got an opportunity to do this, and thank you, Joe, for having me. Thank you, for doing this and doing what you do, and everything. Brother Counsel, I hope to connect here soon. Please, I put my my contact in the notes.
We should, Darnell. And my condolences also. That's terrible what happened to your child.
Thank you. But these people today are making a change for the world, and that's what we all need to do. So thank you, guys. Great being here. Thank you, Joe, for having me.
We'll get you back on.
Okay.
Great having you. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and Joel, I just have to go by another 9 minutes, 8:45. So I mean,
a lot of people want to hear what you're saying, so let's let it play for about 5 minutes, and then I'll get your final thoughts.
All right.
Thank you, brother.
Littlest of have prevented, and as gun owners and those are the peers. They take that responsibility seriously, but all we really require is basic, ordinary care, and it wasn't done here.
Prosecutor, along those lines, you ended up using that cable lock during the rebuttal. How much of a lasting impression do you think that made on the jury?
It made a lasting impression on me when I installed that lock for the first time, and my team. We were all sitting around, and it was just very upsetting when I demonstrated that, and it was 10 to 12 seconds. 10 to 12 seconds, and I'm not a police officer, and I'm not an expert in firearms. It's 10 to 12 seconds. And I'm not sure what impact it had on the jury, but it has an impact on me, and I think any parent, and I think for sure these parents standing next to me.
Any idea how many hours your team spent working on the Crumbley case?
It's been 2.5 years. It was many legal.
What a big day in.
Hey, I can't override the big man, Vinny Politan. I'm not going to compete with him. By the way, Vinny's got a new YouTube channel that's awesome. So everyone's getting in the game, and got a lot of synergies here. But Brother Counsel, obviously Karen McDonald spoke very eloquently. She's, like you said, she's done it all. She has a great courtroom presence. She talked about the fact that there needs to be accountability, that these were egregious facts. The shooting could have been prevented. Lives could have been saved. And she said it's just about basic, reasonable, ordinary care and looking out for your children. Then went on to say that this gun violence is a public health crisis. But the real stars of that press conference just now were the parents. Steve St. Juliana, who's Hannah's father, got up there and just said so much more has to be done. Crazy that the way our society is reacting to this, obviously talking about the politics, polarizing the country with gun ownership. He says we can put people on the moon. We can build the Hoover Dam, but we can't keep our kids safe in schools. Then you had Buck Meir. He was wearing the number 42 on his chain. He has a foundation now called 42 Strong. People want to help with this cause. He also said, look, this is a nonpartisan issue. And he said, look, we have to go after the school next. They are the proverbial fourth leg. He even went on to say it's time to break up the administration country club. And then we heard from Nicole Beausoleil, Madison's mom, and Craig Schilling, the final father, who admitted that his heart was jumping out of his chest. And you could feel the pain there. Your reaction watching that?
Yeah, well, if I may, Joel, just to give you a few reactions. Number one is that I thought also that when she put that cable lock in the gun and closing arguments, I thought that was very powerful. And she didn't do that in the first trial with Jennifer Crumbley. And I thought that was very powerful, and she knew it was going to be very powerful. So that was a good move on her part. Obviously, the parents, I have 6 children myself. You can't imagine ever losing one, and especially to violence, as Darnell said. It's just, it's you can't imagine it, and I can't imagine the pain that is, and I can't imagine the recovery if there is ever one. It's just mind-boggling. I mean, I have friends, obviously, we probably all have friends that have lost children, and it's something you never get over. And it's a very sad issue. And then the ultimate question is, everybody wants the same thing. Nobody wants to see children die. Nobody wants gun deaths. Nobody wants all this. The question really is, how do you get there? And that's really where you start getting into this really deep political debate about what's the right way and the approach, and how do we control gun violence, and do we take away the guns? Do we give more? That's a never-ending political debate. Everybody wants the same thing, so how we get there has just been a little bit of a puzzle. So it's heart-wrenching, but I mean, something has to happen, and the question is what.
That's a great question. It's a great question. What is it? I think there was some, at least sort of etching away at it here with these trials. I think parents will wake up tomorrow or tonight with the social media the way it is, and we'll see these headlines, and it will give some parents pause to say, hey, maybe I need to be more vigilant about my child. Real quickly, Brother Counsel, because I need to text you after this. Is it the 313 or the 248?
The 313.
All right. But listen, thank you so much for jumping in here. I did not expect to be on the air for an hour and 40 minutes because I did a podcast earlier in the day. Your insight is much needed, and I'm glad that you've got a YouTube channel, and I'm hoping that you will come back as a best guest.
Yeah, look, I mean, if I can get the title best guest on STS, I mean, why wouldn't I?
We're going to definitely make it happen. Maybe we'll even bring your brother on. There's one final question here. How would you defend the school here? Is this, the school's obviously going to be a target of everyone.
The school's defense, I think we kind of saw this during the trial. The school's defense is going to be that they didn't have any of the information that James and Jennifer did. All they saw was a kid who looked a little sad. He never had any disciplinary problems. That came out during the testimony. They didn't really see some such terrible mental issues. They saw him one day looking up ammunition, which this is a gun-heavy school district. Everyone's looking up guns and ammunition, probably out of school hours, or going to shooting ranges, or going hunting. So it wasn't crazy out of the ordinary for one of their students to be looking up guns. They didn't really know so much about his mental health history. I imagine that's going to be their line. And also something interesting that, once they did get that math sheet, he didn't want him to be alone. He wanted him to get help. He preferred for him to go home that day. He said that, Sean Hopkins, the school counselor, he said at least within 48 hours. So, according to his training and knowledge and experience, he was reacting in the appropriate way. And it's because he didn't know everything that James and Jennifer either knew or should have known. So then how can you expect him to appreciate the emergency that was unfolding in front of him? So that's probably going to be the defense. That's what we kind of heard about, during the trial. And it's pretty decent. I can't say that, it's not going to work. Well, we'll see. But that's my take on it.
Our children are our most important resource. With that, there's a caveat that I can see my kids because I can see the COE backstage and they're still awake, and that's not a good thing for me.
Well, Joel, just to let you know, Joel, when I got the message from Steve that you guys want to do a reaction very soon, it was bedtime in my house, and I turned to my wife and I said, it's your choice. I can either say no or yes. And she said, STS, best guess. What's the question? I'll take care of bedtime. So
I love it. Please thank your wife for that one. What is the age range of your children, if I may ask?
my oldest is 15, begging us to start practicing driving, and my youngest is 5. And I've got 6 children, so it's a busy time.
That was a busy few years there, but God bless you. God bless your children. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. We'll get you back on as a best guest. Thank your wife and say hi to your brother.
Absolutely, Joel. Nice to meet you. And yeah, we'll be seeing each other again.
Yeah, love you, America. Love you, Oakland County, Michigan. And of course, our thoughts tonight are with the victims of this horrific school shooting. So, and of course, all the families. I'll be back tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern. And we'll be looking at the Riley Strain case. He's a 22-year-old that went missing in Nashville, Tennessee, just disappeared into the thin blue air. We will ask the homicide detective and the FBI agent, Phil and Scott, about that. See you tomorrow, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Huge thanks to this panel. Talk to you then.